This is the gospel of Jesus Christ according to St. Mark, the first chapter. As soon as Jesus and the disciples left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening, at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let's go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also. For that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. This is the gospel of our Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Well, there are twin siren calls of demons, both silenced by Jesus in this passage, keeping us lashed to the mast of our faith. Jesus seems to have learned his lesson from the confrontation with the unclean spirit in the synagogue they left just prior to this encounter. That son of a gun wouldn't shut up about who Jesus was, and it was blowing his cover. So Jesus won't even let the demons speak now when the whole city comes out to Andrew and Simon's house, because they know who he is. Of course, that is knowledge that we and the original audience of Mark's gospel share with the demons. The divine nature of Christ isn't a surprise to anyone listening to this story of Jesus' life, but in it, Jesus tightly guards that secret, which begs the question, why? Myriad plausible answers to that question have been suggested, but I will propose that if Jesus came out of the gate waving his divinity, then it would have been easy to forget that other equally true aspect of his nature, his humanity. And that's not an unimportant aspect of Jesus' character. See, after we celebrate the Eucharist today, I will offer a prayer of thanksgiving that Jesus was not just a sacrifice, but also a model for the godly life. It's easy to ignore that model if we elevate the person to an inhuman status. Fred Rogers' late wife, Joanne, after his passing, insisted that she didn't want anyone remembering him as a flawless saint because it made people admire him without any hope of emulating him. Thinking of Jesus only as a superhuman God can have the same effect. It can make us lose hope of ever following Jesus' example. Joanne Rogers would say to people who would claim to her that they could not live like Fred, but man, did they admire it. She would say, "You can. You can do it." And when the path to which Jesus calls us seems too difficult for us mere humans, I hear Jesus saying the same thing. You can do it. You can. I will send my Spirit upon you to make sure of it. He will not even let the demons speak when they try to break our will with the half-truth of Jesus' divinity. The demons say he is God. Of course he can do this. You You are only human. You must still bow to our ways. You must still think of yourself first. You must still fear your neighbor. And if you even allow a single rule of the institution to be bent, even if it is for love, well, the baby's going to go out with the bathwater and the whole thing will come crashing down because you are only human. That is what the demons say to us. And it is a convincing argument. It is convincing because, like most really convincing and truly devastating lies in this world, it doesn't tell a lie. It just leaves out a bit of the truth. Jesus is God. We are only human. That is what the demons will profess, and it is completely true. They just leave out the bit about Jesus also being human. They don't tell us that we have been blessed with his Spirit or that we enjoy communion with God at that holy table. They don't want us to know that because if we did, it would embolden us to live like an actual communion of saints. See, even as humans, we have the power to cast off the shackles that would prevent us from participating in God's coming kingdom, while the demons shout, "Sinner," at any number of broken and hurting people. Us broken and hurting people can repeat in unison the mantras, "Beloved, child of God, saint of this church." We have the capacity to shout the fullness of God's story right back at the demonic half-truths that would make an enemy of our neighbor. Because Jesus is not only God. You are not only a sinner. Don't let the truth of your need for God diminish the reality of the power that God has given you to effect real change in the lives of those you encounter. You can, and you do. You do affect that change. To the members of the congregations I serve, donations to the food bank make a real change in the life of someone who is uncertain of where their next meal's coming from. The councils of both Grace and Emmanuel have never hesitated, not any time I have been here, to offer from their limited resources to join with the efforts of members of this community to help others in this community when they have the courage to ask. And that changes lives more than even just the one to whom those resources go. It does. And all of that is made possible by all of you who gave of your limited resources to support that cause. See, even small congregations like ours have the power to change lives. You are, every one of you, crucial to that life-changing work. You have been given that power by God. And perhaps, maybe even especially, small congregations like these have the power to cast out certain specific demons. Demons like loneliness and fear and self-doubt. I see you do it every time you check up on one another on the phone or stopping by a home just to see how you are doing. You do it every single time you embrace one another, metaphorically now, but not always, when you embrace one another in the fullness of your stories, when you relish in the details of those stories, you cast out the demons that would bind us to the single story of a half-truth of our own narrative. And that is, in many ways, more effective work in the kinds of settings that I serve than it would be in a stadium listening to an admittedly more charismatic preacher than me. But that's why I choose to serve in the places like I do, to the people whom I serve. It is a spiritual gift that is present to lift up an authentic child of God where the demons would tell us a one-dimensional fiction stands, and you have that power. I hope you realize it. I hope you do. But I also acknowledge that once you do realize it, when you realize you have that power, it can be overwhelming because there's so much need. Perhaps the most relatable aspect in this story is what it feels like to have the whole city track you down and stand outside the door with its demands. The past year alone has been filled with so many challenges, some of them global in scale, others heartbreakingly intimate. But so many that it's easy to lose hope that we can do anything. It can feel easier to say that we can't do anything, that there is nothing that can be done by us because we are only human. That can feel easier than to acknowledge the power God has given us to stand up to the task. We don't have to bear the burden of it if we can't do anything about it, do we? And that is the second siren call that Jesus silences today. It is the offer of rest from our responsibility to the least of these, and it is an alluring call because it's one we need. It's one we cannot ignore. We cannot be on edge at full tilt at all times without burning up. So if you find yourself there, if you find yourself just about ready to burn out, I implore you, do not deny the divinity God bestows upon you with his Spirit and the power you wield just to seize rest. Instead, seek to emulate the example set by the human Jesus as a model for the godly life. When the city was outside that door, when he had healed many, and the people were still asking for more, when they came hunting for him, he didn't abdicate the power of his divinity, but he did take a break. He went to a deserted place away from them all and prayed. They had to come hunting for him, but he took a break. And then, rejuvenated, they went on to the next town to do what he had come to do. He took a break, and you can too. You don't have to choose between the two siren calls of either I am too weak to do anything or I must be able to do it all. You can stay lashed to the mast that is the cross of Christ, both God and human, able to change this world and join in God's coming kingdom, and yet still needing to ask God for rejuvenation in those moments of peace and rest. Hold true to that center line. Let the demons be silenced, and if you need it, rest. After all, that is what Jesus would do, isn't it?